Hey everyone, Dan Jackson here again, coming at you live on tape from his wife's garage gym of character, sponsored by Training Think Tank. Just kidding. In all seriousness, relative to this week's discussion, it's very similar to last week. Heavy. It kind of sounds like Doc Brown. There's that word again, heavy. Is there something wrong with the gravitational pull in the future? But it's for myself, it's difficult to pinpoint 3 to 5 ideas because there's a lot of opportunity for creation in this standpoint. And to be limited to 3 to 5 frustrates me. However, I'll do my best. And I'll begin with when being approached by this coach in the sport, which I'll just use swimming for the statement of athlete composure and optimal performance. First, ask the coach how much familiarity he or she or they have with the concept or with the context. And for that to be the first step is loaded in itself. Because there are some coaches, in my experience anyway, that have very little insight on the necessary, quote unquote, necessary understandings of something as complex as this. Now, from that standpoint, let's lay out the speculation that there is some comprehension in that regard. I would then ask the coach if they feel limited into how structured it would need to be. And what I mean by that is, do they feel it need to be textbook and understanding, or do they feel they can have some degree of innovation with it all? And I say that because of how important creativity is within our occupation. Innovation, it reigns supreme, because if we don't have the ability to be innovative as coaches, we're not going to have the ability to conform to the individual needs, theoretically or potentially, that an athlete may need. Now, in swimming, it's remarkably subjective, and what motivates one person and to find not motivates, but what would be the optimal range, realm, spectrum, what have you, of anxiety, athlete composure for optimal performance, etc., is going to greatly vary from person to person. And similar to the example I used last week is the coach-athlete relationship that I stated in my last video. I didn't like a kid, he didn't like me. We transformed into this magnificent thing based off me asking him why and valuing his input and choosing to learn from him, to where then we found his ideal state. So that would be a subjective recommendation, assuming that it might fit that coach's persona. But no, the eyes off, the individual zone of functioning that's referenced in the video, Hannon's individual eyes off theory, to me, it's remarkably applicable, because that can be an area where trial and error may reign supreme, and there could be a lot of success generated from that. Personally, throughout my coaching career, the past 12 years, that has been very important in the role, in this coaching role. Now, branching off from that, the coach could then utilize the information that they gathered through this process of understanding the base level of it all, leading into the asking the why by submerging his ego. Doc Councilman, submerge your ego, get to know your athletes, etc., to then generate an understanding. I'm an advocate for learn from the athletes. They will teach you more than you can read. And that's a really unique thing that a lot of people find interesting from a societal standpoint. We think about the concept of, we as coaches are here to teach, the athletes learn from us. I remarkably argue the opposite. If you as a coach are not learning from the child or the athlete, etc., you're not a servant leader, because you are not putting forth the effort to learn something potentially brand new. Now, that being said, I'm very curious as to how the responses would be to that. Subjectively, I've learned a great deal from all the kids that I've worked with, and I would not be the type of person I am without their input. Their input is hyper valuable. So as we progress forward with this coach, hopefully this subjective ideal that I've placed upon him would either lead him down a path of failure to learn from, or subjective definition of success to hopefully be open-minded enough to learn from. It's very difficult to learn from always having success. That's kind of, I would say, a bell curve phrasing of that. But I'm trying to think of how to phrase it appropriately. This success, quote unquote, that could be generated if this coach remains open-minded enough, they may be able to branch upon it further. It's cosmotic. It's an open-ended cosmos of opportunity and potential for learning about how to, quote unquote, understand athlete composure for optimal performance. So again, the sequence of ideas would be, Coach, what understanding do you have of anxiety, arousal, stress, and using that to essentially build confidence by learning the child and allowing them to provide you input and let them know that you are learning from them. And then the third and final aspect of that is, can it be built upon? Like I said, 3 to 5 steps it's quite limiting, but that's also because my mind is remarkably moving all the time, and that sounds conceited, and I apologize. However, the reality is, it's an infinitesimal approach, or there's infinitesimal opportunities, essentially, similar to Rick and Morty, infinite universes. Now, all of this being said, I'm very curious. How do you guys feel about this whole entire thing? Like, it's not really thought a lot about in my experience. Would you guys go about allowing the coach to have an open-ended approach, or would it need to be directly defined and the pavement would need to be laid down in order for it to be applicable, appropriate, etc.? That is my question. I challenge you guys. How would you disagree with what I've said? Have a great night.